Today on the Women Mind the Water Artivist series, I'm speaking with Erin Smith. Erin is the CEO of Ocean Soul, a social enterprise that upcycles flip-flops found along the beaches and waterways of Kenya. Ocean Soul has created a successful model for cleaning up ocean trash and transforming the trash into colorful sculptures, high-fashion clothes, and mattresses. Ocean Soul also provides the local community with sustainable employment and educational opportunities. The Women Mind the Water podcast series engages artists in conversation about their work and explores the connection with the ocean. Through their stories, Women Mind the Water hopes to inspire and encourage action to protect the ocean and her creatures. I am really pleased to welcome Erin Smith to the Artivist Series podcast. Erin has worked in telecommunications and finance before making a pivot in 2016 when she became CEO of Ocean Soul. Erin may not be an artist herself, but she oversees an organization that employs talented artists who create colorful, engaging sculptures from the tons of flip-flops that wash up along the shores of Kenya, a country in East Africa. The men and women who are employed by Ocean Soul work in various capacities, from beach cleanup to sculpting the discarded flip-flops into colorful, big smile-producing sculptures. Ocean Soul is a social enterprise that supports over 1,200 people and recycles about 750,000 flip-flops annually. Welcome, Erin. Thank you. I am looking forward to learning more about Ocean Soul and sharing some terrific pictures. Folks, you really should make time to watch the video podcast so you can see the work of Ocean Soul's artists. Erin, I was fortunate many years ago to go to visit Kenya. I didn't get a chance to visit the beach, so I'd like to begin by having you describe the coastal community in which Ocean Soul is based.
Well, thank you, Pam, very much for having me first, and I'm happy to tell you all about Ocean Soul. Ocean Soul has two headquarters. One is in Nairobi, where we produce and make the art, and I'll explain why we have that workshop there. And then we're based out of Kilifi, Kenya, which is between Mombasa and Malindi on the Indian Ocean. And that is where we run all of our coastal community work in terms of beach cleanups, working with women in particular, and doing a lot of our conservation educational programs there along those schools, because they're the most impacted from overfishing and some of the other, kind of things that are going on in the deterioration of ocean health.
Okay. So who's the founder of Ocean Soul, and what was the inspiration or motivation for her to create a socially conscious, environmentally focused enterprise?
So Julie Church was the founder. She founded it started off, I would say, as a project. Julie was inspired. She was working for the World Wildlife Fund. I always mess that up, WWF, and was working in northern Kenya on an island called Kiwayu. Beautiful, beautiful island right near Somalia. And they were doing a study on turtle hatching. And unbeknownst to her and her colleagues, they ended up on this beach, and they saw a bunch of village women in particular cleaning the beaches and keeping the flip-flops aside. I mean, they were cleaning the whole beaches because they were cleaning it to have the turtles to be able to lay their eggs. And then she watched as, and they were there for like weeks, studying all this. And then the women were taking all of the flip-flops. And first she was like, there's so many flip-flops, which was odd, because you don't think about that. Especially, I think those of us, I call it above the equator and kind of in the first world. But the village women were taking them back to the villages, and the kids were playing with them, and they were cutting them and making sculptures to make toys out of them. So they were doing everything from making little trucks and making like wheels out of the flip-flops. And she started to look at it in this kind of genius way in order to, kind of upcycle this material that they had not seen. And that gave her the idea to kind of quit the job. She started this project and started getting that going, the momentum for the whole, effort that ended up becoming Ocean Soul.
So there was already some movement before she came along to use the flip-flops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like it because it was with the Kenyan coastal women that were, it was kind of, I think, the great part of those stories, two things. One, they knew they needed to clean the beaches for the sea turtles to hatch. And then second of all, they were kind of genius enough to go, what can we do with this asset of all this kind of trash and stuff that they found, and use it for purposes, for their children and entertainment.
That's what women are, just so resourceful. It's wonderful.
Exactly.
The Women Mind the Water podcast has featured a number of environmentally focused organizations, but none up to this point have been as socially conscious as Ocean Soul. What do you think the source of this social consciousness is?
So just to give you a little bit of history of Ocean Soul. So Julie came on board, she called it the Flip-Flop Recycling Company. And then she got an investor. And the reason this is kind of an important thing is this investor and Julie, Julie's kind of a below water kind of girl, and the investor was a spreadsheet type kind of guy. And let's just say, the two had difficulties in a common vision. So what was happening is, and this is how I entered, is it wasn't really becoming a business, and it really wasn't becoming a nonprofit. It was kind of stuck between kind of two visions that couldn't, kind of coalesce together and move forward. So when I got involved, that's when I really took some of my background in business, and I worked in private equity, as you mentioned, in some of these places. And I was like, what is the asset of this enterprise? And the asset is people. And the people were not being managed as artisans and as to their creative talents. There wasn't structure, there wasn't reward system, there wasn't benefits for them. So we started to do that at the employee level, which then kind of allowed us to branch out and take that ethos into the community to say, we need to start working with these high impact coastal communities, particularly women. What are those programs those women need, not only for life sustainable skills, but also in terms of engaging them in conservation. And I think we just, that was just kind of a discipline from my background that I kind of brought in, even on a small scale, to make such an impact. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of. A lot of people do conservation work, but I think because we do conservation and kind of social, kind of helping with the social side of our employees and our ecosystem, it really has seen a lot of benefits.
It takes something special to have you decide to settle in Kenya and focus on flip-flops.
Yeah, well, I was 50 at the time, and basically it was hard to get the attention of the techies anymore to listen to, me, like, as a visionary in the tech space. So I kind of saw my career, I'd spent a lifetime in business class, first class, hotels. I spent a lifetime alone. I really just wanted to kind of do something that was back to who I was, which is, I was a swimmer. I was a competitive swimmer. I've been an ocean lover, water sports fanatic. I love the ocean. I love nature. And I love art. And I also love, kind of business. And like, it just was a platform for me.
It all came together. Yeah.
It all came together. It's like some days I feel like I'm the artist, like, that tour I showed you around my house with all of our art, I love being surrounded by art.
So I have to say, I never thought of flip-flops as being an ocean pollution problem. At least I never imagined 750,000 flip-flops washing ashore in one place. Where do all those flip-flops come from?
That's a great question, Pam. And we're actually starting a whole series called What the Flip-Flop, because that is the one.
I love that title. Yeah.
Yes, I think we'll be, and I'm going to do whether, I don't know, the, podcast or whatever, people are doing nowadays to explain, because I think this is an issue, right? So why are there so many flip-flops? The reason is that the flip-flop is the number one shoe sold in the world. 3.5 billion people are estimated to wear flip-flops. This shoe is the poor man's shoe in the majority of countries, right? So if you look at where you have a combination of an emerging market, or coastal communities, poverty, kind of, what I would say, low wages, what can they afford? Well, these flip-flops are, between $1 and $3. They're very cheap. They are not Havaianas. They are not Tory Burch. They are not, anything sexy. They are a medium to get from A to B, without soiling your feet. If I have loads of pictures of, we go around the world and I take pictures of, kind of just streets of people just wearing flip-flops. They don't match. They don't anything. So, it's not that these poor people are, dirtying our oceans, because that's not fair, right? It's the sheer volume of which these flip-flops are purchased.
That explains volume, but how do they end up in the ocean?
So they end up in the ocean because these guys, they're villages, right? They're mostly in poor countries. Their waste management and infrastructure isn't there. So, you'll put like in even the village, not I don't live in a village, but like a little community I live in, everybody wears them. They put them in the trash. The trash doesn't know what to do with them, right? So they stick them into landfill. Those landfills or dumps, because sometimes it's not even as big as a landfill, are next to the ocean or a river. Why? Because when the high tides come in, it will empty the dumps, right? And that keeps us less work for them. They think, oh, that's a recycling problem. So it's the infrastructure of which this volume of flip-flops comes in that ends up. So now why do they end up in Kenya? Well, we get ours a lot, mostly from Malaysia, India, China, Sri Lanka, Goa, and they come from all these massive tidal waves that come and they just float, and we get them by monsoon. So like my beach personally is wrecked for about 6 months of the year with trash. And, we get of that trash on our beach, I'd say about 40% of it is flip-flops. And then they come from the rivers, come from Kenya. So all the waterways in Kenya, come, and then they end up in the ocean and our rivers. So it's a huge volume problem, and it's getting worse. I can see it getting worse. And it's not just Kenya. I mean, I've seen this in Haiti. I've been to Haiti. I've been to Guatemala. I've been to Honduras. I've been to India. It's the same problem. We're just the only little ones doing it in Kenya right now.
So who comes up with the idea for the sculptural designs? Is it one artist that's responsible for the designs, or is it a team effort?
It depends on it's quite an interesting story about the artists. So the artists are previous wood carvers. So how we find the artists, and that's why we have this headquarters in Nairobi, because they're mostly upcountry skilled guys that used to cut down trees to make curios to sell to foreigners and tourists. So they were our artists that we've recreated and shown them how to reskilled them to use the flip-flop medium. We just basically show them a picture, and they, kind of look at the picture and everything, and then they can replicate it. When we do new things, like we've designed everything from like a life-size Honda 2002, or like the reindeer that's kind of behind me, or the seahorse, usually myself or one of the team members, or Eric, my partner, we design them and, get pictures of them, and then we blow them up through a big, projector, and they trace them, and then they're off, and they have a couple of referral pictures, and they just do it by trial and error.
So what's the most unusual flip-flop design request that Ocean Soul has received?
Well, I would say the most unusual and the most fantastic has been this Honda I referred to. I mean, we made literally a life-size replica of the Honda 2002 convertible. It was for a gentleman in Alabama. He was a car dealer owner. He wanted to have this spectacular statement piece to, kind of entertain children and, customers. And, he did it as a differentiation of his brand. That took a lot of work. We used metal, that one had metal frame, and then we had some, polyurethane in there, and we had flip-flops, and, that was kind of, I would say, the hardest, most spectacular, piece that we've done.
So what are the challenges of working with flip-flops? For example, what happens to the leftover odds and ends?
Well, I'll answer that first, and then work my way backwards. So of course, we have waste, right? Because we collect all of these flip-flops, and we carve things. And like, if you look at the dog here, he will have started out maybe with like a square nose. So obviously when the guys are carving, there'll be shavings and cutoffs from, shaping his ears and his legs and stuff. Where that goes onto the floor. And every night they pick those up, all the artists pick those up, and we put them into a big bin. And then we shred it. And we shred it into very, very fine, well, not too fine, well, kind of fine bits, kind of like the size of a pen, the end of a pen. We take that and then we put some like mosquito netting, but a little bit heavier around it. And we make mattresses. So those mattresses are donated to the refugee camp up in Dadaab. We do that through the Red Cross or from through some of the different charities. They can come by and pick those up. They can take them with them. We give them away for free. I will charge, I do make dog beds for kind of more rich people. We'll charge, like making a nice dog bed for $80. That kind of funds 80, kind of mattresses. So that's what we do with our waste. Sadly, right now, unless you work with a biodegradable rubber, this medium is, very difficult to, kind of recycle or kind of change into new formation, right? It can be merged. I call it, we come kind of kicking the problem forward, right? So I do that with mattresses. We've taken those bits and we've also mixed those with cement and made like building blocks. So maybe it's 60% cement and then 40% of our chips. And it just, we kind of put it into the housing materials. So we try anything, and anyone that has an idea, we kind of take it on and try to figure out what to do.
So in a recent podcast, I spoke to another very energetic, passionate person. I spoke to Nina Azara. She's a 14-year-old Indonesian woman who has stepped onto the global stage, calling attention to the illegal dumping of plastic in her country of Indonesia. She has gained the attention of many world leaders and brought some success in reducing plastic pollution in Indonesia. Do you think Ocean Soul has been effective in calling attention to plastic pollution in Kenya? And what else do you think should be done?
I mean, that's a really thought-provoking question that it's interesting as I kind of prepared thinking about this. I don't think Ocean Soul has been in Kenya a massive leader in the attention of plastic. I think Ocean Soul started and was one of the, and I say this because if you look at the history and the timing, right? We started 10 years ago in a kind of a small thing, and we're kind of a nonprofit retailer. We're like the Girl Scouts. We have to sell cookies to do good, right? So it's like the fastest way to sell art is probably not in Kenya. We do have a lot of supporters there, but you can't sustain the amount of scale that we clean and produce and upcycle, kind of just relying on that Kenyan market. So I do think, rightly or wrongly, because this is, like I said, has brought some thoughts to me. We focus a lot internationally on our product and our brand and our messaging. So I'm not sure there's many more organizations within Kenya that are truly plastic, kind of drilling home the message. So much so that Kenya is, I think, the only country in the world, or it certainly was the first country in the world, to ban plastic bags, like the ones you get from, what do we have here? No, Sainsbury's. That's when I lived in London. Like Publix and stuff.
Right, right.
You cannot. It is illegal to have those bags in Kenya. They're about to do the the straws as well. And our president has been quite like, we didn't use these things 10 years ago, which is true. Like when I first went to Kenya, the plastic consumption was so low, and just with the rise of the middle class and consumerism, it's got it gone. So he's cut a lot of that off. And the UN is headquartered there in Nairobi, especially the UN, UNEP, the environmental program, which is the big, for Ocean Day and everything, that is headquartered in Nairobi. So we have a lot of organizations beating on the drum, about plastic and its impacts on the ocean. I think that Ocean Soul has a really unique space globally to talk about flip-flop debris. And we're probably the only ones talking about it. Sadly, we're just a little art company and not a massive scale to kind of really bring attention to it. But I think our art does get people talking about it.
And I agree with that. And I in no way want to cast aspersions to what you do, because I think it's wonderful how you've created a model that really has a social consciousness that is creating a community of women and men that are cleaning up their beaches and putting it to a purpose. It
Yes.
may be that the purpose is lost as far as these are a lot of flip-flops, but I think the conversation like you're having with me now raises issues for other people, and you are in that niche that you do so well. What would you like to tell people who live outside of Kenya? How can they help, or what should they be doing to make the lives of people who live along the coast better?
Well, I mean, in particular in Kenya, I think it's, how to support our cause is obviously, kind of helping fund beach cleanups and buying our art and things like that. But I think in general, the call to action, but it's quite interesting, man, because people ask me a lot. I've been on podcasts and TV shows and they'll say, well, Erin, do you want people to stop buying flip-flops? And it's like, well, the problem is we're not the flip-flop problem, right?
Right.
And it's a problem. Like a friend of mine said, oh, I yelled at my husband. He went and bought Ziploc bags. And I said, well, you have to understand, I think what we can do as a community at once is get our brains around thinking around, and I call it like below the equator only because it's like, seems like, between South America and India and, kind of where we are in Africa, kind of the mindset's different. A Ziploc bag in Kenya is worth $100 because they can preserve food. You know what I mean? So the value of our trash is different based on different communities. And I think that's where messaging can be so hard. It was great. The single-use plastic straw, got everybody thinking about it, but it's like, it doesn't resonate in other communities because they don't have straws. So it got us to stop here, but it's like, that hasn't solved maybe a bigger problem over there. So it's a weird, thing because it's kind of like, I don't know how people could really, and sitting in America, in Florida and Maine, what can we do to help, with the flip-flop pollution? Because we're not really causing it unless it's, and it's like, or it's getting out and sponsoring and buying. What I do with businesses is I say, what you can do is buy a $25,000 piece of masterpiece art that stands for flip-flop pollution. And you're educating every time somebody walks into your lobby, you've got a piece of art that talks about flip-flop pollution and its destruction and its havoc on wages and kind of health of employees, et cetera, et cetera. Until I kind of somebody smarter comes along and tells me kind of from a science perspective what can be done. Biodegradable flip-flops, that's the choice we can all make.
I'm going to ask you, because I imagine a lot of listeners will want to know how they can buy an Ocean Soul creation. Where are these sculptures available?
So we are online at oceansoulonline.com, and we're migrating to oceansoul.com. You'll find us. We're the only ones there. Ocean Soul Africa, we're all those brands. And we sell online. And you can, buy everything from $20 to $900 online. If you want something made specifically, like your dog or your cat, we make a lot of bespoke or custom pieces. We have a lot of people that have designed things for themselves, like a peacock or, various things. And chickens, we're about to do some chickens for a big feed store. Those, we get in touch with you. We work with you through the design process, and that is quite fun to do.
And Erin, I want to thank you for joining me on the Women Mind the Water podcast. I hope listeners have found the story of Ocean Soul inspiring and informative. I'd like to remind listeners that I've been speaking with Erin Smith for the Women Mind the Water podcast series. The series can be viewed on womenmindthewater.com. An audio-only version of this podcast is available on the Women Mind the Water website, on iTunes, and other places. Women Mind the Water is grateful to Jane Rice for the use of her song, Women of Water. All rights for the Women Mind the Water name and logo belong to Pam Ferris-Olson. This is Pam Ferris-Olson.